How's it going, everyone? Javita here with another viewer request video. This is basically the other half of Tom's questions, and it's really just kind of two left concerning basically what is a settlement, what are the benefits of being a settlement, and then kind of an economy type question of like, why are there taxes, where does the taxes go, does anybody actually collect them? And these two things are pretty kind of interconnected, so I'm gonna at least attempt to cover this. So starting off, what is a settlement? So a settlement is basically a beacon or collection of beacons in close proximity that have reached a particular threshold of prestige. So if we come over here and look at my beacon control, so right here, this is my beacon. It has 260,000 prestige, and so that makes me, at least just with this beacon alone, that would make me a settlement. The threshold for becoming an outpost, which is the lowest level of settlement, is 10,000 prestige. So if you look up here, it has the name of my beacon right here, and then Lotus Depths, that's the name of my settlement, and in parentheses it has the rank. So I'm considered a village. And if we come down here to Lotus Depths, you see that Lotus Depths collectively has 500,000 prestige plus. And come down here and you can see that there's all sorts of information of who's part of the settlement and all sorts of interesting information down there. I also list the settlement tax rate as well as the world tax rate, but we'll get to that later. So coming back to the requirements of being a settlement, if you're unfamiliar, prestige is basically, it's a number applied to your beacon based off of what you use to build it. So every block, every machine, every block, they all have a base value of prestige. So if you come over and hit F1 and come down to debugging information, let's make this a little bit bigger. Somewhere in here is your beacon. Okay, so you can see here we have the base prestige right here. So this is the grand total of all the stuff in my beacon kind of added up. Down here we have the final prestige. This is after the prestige bonus has been applied. So if you look down here, you can see I'm getting all of these different bonuses based off of, here we have variation, exotic ratio, size, built ratio, chiseled ratio, and then the total for 116% on top of my base. So that's why it's essentially doubled. If we come back over here, we can look at the coin box. And so the advantage of being a settlement is if you're at least an outpost, then you can start collecting footfall. And footfall is generated anytime that another player visits your beacon. I believe it's a little bit unclear as to whether or not if a friend visits your beacon, if you still get footfall. From my understanding, friends are supposed to still generate footfall. However, if they have permissions to your beacon, then they don't generate footfall. I think that's the last thing I heard on that, but could use a little bit of testing. But the rank of the settlement determines how much coin per visitor they generate. So looking at my notes over here, an outpost will generate 20 coins per footfall, hamlet will do 30, village will do 40, a town will do 60, city 80, and then finally a great city will generate 100 coins per footfall. And so the prestige requirements for those takes 10,000 to be an outpost, 50,000 to be a hamlet, 250,000 to be a village, 1.25 million to be a town, 6.5 million to be a city, and then over 32 million to be a great city. So, to the best of my knowledge, there are no great cities in Boundless just yet. I believe Thurka Market and both Aquatopia are considered cities, if I'm not mistaken. I can certainly check. Yes, Aquatopia is considered a city, so. But another thing, if you notice on this coin box, there's also listed coin from share of tax. So this is something that is not implemented quite yet. If you also look over here, there's the settlement tax rate and then the world tax rate. So the settlement tax rate really doesn't do anything just yet. So presumably once the settlement tax rate kicks in, then you'll start getting coin based off of the tax rate, kind of alongside your footfall. I don't have any proof of that. That's just kind of looking at it and, well, I guess that's how it works. But coming over to this world tax rate, sadly, there's not a lot of current information on this, but if we jump over to the web browser, you can see this old post. It's all the way back from March of 2016. So while this is pretty old information, the way the game is being set up basically follows this model. So you have this nice diagram right here. We have the game right here. So we have inputs and outputs. So basically world regeneration adds resources into the game as well as salary. The original post doesn't really explain what the salary is, but further down it's explained that the central guild is kind of responsible for both investing in players as well as taxing them. So when you get taxed, that's where your money goes. It goes to the central guild, and then they turn around and basically pay it right back to the players from basically leveling up, completing feats, and presumably even the footfall is potentially coming from the central guild. And then it circulates around and then comes out in the forms of taxes or using up items like tools and building and whatnot. So you can see the coins are circulating. The purple is coins, green is the resources, and so that's kind of the model that they were going for. And here we have the central guild investment coming in right there. And they also go on to say that the player-made guilds, when they're finally introduced, they can actually grow to a size to where they can essentially challenge the central guild and take over some of the responsibilities, like collecting taxes. Obviously, I don't think they could take it over completely, and the devs even said so further down here somewhere, because basically if coin is never removed from the game, then you run into issues like hyperinflation and whatnot. So let's hop over to a shop stand, and anytime you're setting a price, you can see that here's the world tax. The settlement tax, of course, isn't listed yet because it's not implemented, and you have this handy after skill. So there is 2 skills you can take to reduce the tax. It's kind of splitting hairs whether or not it's worth it, but right up here you can set what the customer actually pays. So I want to sell something for, say, 100 coins, and down here it's going to show me how much I make. So if you want to be the one to make 100 coins, all you have to do is kind of bump up the price until it gets to about what you want to be making. It's pretty handy that it's done in this way, because previously you would set how much you would make and then you wouldn't even know that the customer was paying this amount right here. So this is pretty handy for setting what the customer is actually going to pay. And over here you can see that the customer is going to pay that 110 coins and that you're actually going to be making 102 coins. So that's pretty much what that means right there. And it's the same thing for request baskets. You come over here and you set what the customer will receive. So they'll be getting 100 coins, and it's going to cost me actually 107 coins. So if I don't want to pay 107 coins, then you can kind of experiment to see what number you have to type in that will make it to where you pay however much you want to pay. Can't quite make it pay exactly 100 coins, since when I bump it to 94, it goes up to 101 coins. So jumping back over to the beacon, you can kind of look at this as, okay, the central guild is reinvesting into the players based off of how often their settlements are visited, and maybe eventually we'll get a share of the tax here. And looking at this, both settlement and world tax rate, I would not be surprised if this would be based off of essentially population. So as the world becomes overpopulated, I would imagine that the tax rate would go up to kind of incentivize players to travel to less populated planets and kind of prevent everybody from, oh, let's all pile onto Thurka because it's the biggest cities type thing. And then kind of the same thing with the settlement tax rate. Who knows, the settlement tax rate might be controllable by players at some point, or it could be based off of population, prestige, who knows. Really not very much is known about this, but makes for some pretty interesting stuff, especially if player-ran guilds can take over at least a portion of the taxes. It'd be a pretty awesome way for the guilds to basically raise money without having to beg for donations from their members. So that's pretty awesome. Obviously some issues like hyperinflation need to be addressed, so players probably won't be able to gain complete control over taxes. But at any rate, I think that wraps up these questions pretty nicely. So this was Javita, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and if there's anything you didn't like, please let me know down below. Also, if you like my channel and want to get cool perks, check out my Patreon page. Until next time, peace.